Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Nice to see you. We start this afternoon with a simple question. What has happened to the Tea Party? Heated debates over men in Speedos and witchcraft? Isn't this a far cry from the original issue that set the Tea Party to a boil?
How about this, President and new administration? Why don't you put up a website to have people vote on the internet as a referendum to see if we really want to subsidize the losers' mortgages, or would we like to at least buy cars and buy houses in foreclosure and give them to people that might have a chance to actually prosper down the road and reward people that could carry the water instead of drink the water?
Hey, Rick,
that's a novel idea.
Hey, Rick, did you...
What? Who thought of that?
Well, the mortgage mess, property rights, the economy. That's what my former colleague and current friend, Rick Santelli, ranting on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, rightly so. So fired up, in fact, that he called for a tea party on Chicago's Lake Michigan. But since then, disparate groups of no doubt passionate Americans have been co-opted by either special interests, loud voices looking to make a quick buck, people trying to get rich playing to their anger instead of using that anger to help us all solve this country's obvious corrupt problems.
You've been ridiculed, you've been mocked, you've been slandered by the left. You didn't retreat, you reloaded, you came out even stronger, and you've turned this country around. Tea Party Americans, you're winning. You're winning.
Unemployment is up, foreclosures are higher, investment is down, lending is non-existent, bank profits are higher than they've ever been. Or excuse me, bank profits are down, but bank compensation is higher than it's ever been. Sarah Palin's made a few $10, $20 million manipulating the anger. But I don't know about you. I haven't heard Sarah Palin mention any resolution to property rights, the economic system, mortgage injustice, or the corrupt fraud that is the Federal Reserve, Fannie and Freddie. Have you? And that's what disappoints me, Tea Party. Where is the outrage, not over your founding principles, but over our country's founding principles on the social contract and property rights that your organization, in my view, now fraudulently represents itself to be? Leading people angrily off a cliff instead of harnessing their anger to defend the property rights that are at the core values of this country that Rick Santelli spoke to and Carl Denninger will in just a few minutes, along with my buddy Cenk. Where is the Tea Party in the fight against fraud closure? Where is the Tea Party when it comes to opening the books at Fannie and Freddie and the Federal Reserve? Where are they in supporting the decision today by the New York Federal Reserve and PIMCO to sue Bank of America to get that done? And for those voters seeking a party to represent you and me and anybody else in this country that believes it is better to compete than to cheat, that it is better to be transparent and work than to try to manipulate an angry crowd so that you can sell a bunch of books, Sarah Palin. Serving yourself at our country's expense cannot be tolerated, whether it's a political leader, a media figure, or a politician. And to help us do that, prevent that, I should say, Carl Denninger, founder of Fed Up USA and one of the original founders of the Tea Party movement, along with Rick Santelli and others, and our favorite young Turk, a modern progressive who himself has said if the Tea Party adhered to the principles that they talk about, that I just articulated, Cenk would be the first person at the front of the Tea Party line. But I'm going to start with you, Carl. Can you give me any insight as to how you view the divergence from the core values of the so-called Tea Party, the violation of the property rights of this country, the accommodation of the combination of business and state in this country, which in my view at this point is worse than the combination of church and state? Where do we go wrong and how do we get it back?
Well, I think one of the big problems, Dylan, is that this started out as exactly what you said. We originally began with the premise that fraud is wrong, theft is wrong. We have to fix this. It has to go away. We have to get all of the bad debts out in the open and clear them. And it stayed that way for about a month, and then the moneyed interest came in, and they basically took it back. And as far as I can tell, they did it by saying, look, if, you go down this road, then we won't get any more campaign contributions. And so the Republican Party essentially put the kibosh on this, got their people in and co-opted the Tea Party. And look at what happened with Sarah Palin. I mean, I love her as an individual, but absolutely no voice on this at all.
Cenk.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I couldn't agree with that more, Dylan and Carl. Look at what just happened recently with Bank of America. They're actually doing a number of front groups now. They're doing tax liens. So they buy tax liens, and if somebody has like as small as a $150 tax lien that they didn't pay on time, these guys will then buy it from the government, Florida, for example, the state of Florida, and then say, oh, by the way, I'm charging you thousands of dollars in fees, and then take over people's houses, right? And say, all right, I'm driving you into foreclosure. Why? Because they didn't pay taxes, which were used to bail out Bank of America. Okay, I mean, this is a complete and utter fraud, and the Tea Party's nowhere to be found.
But let's move beyond this, Carl, because quite honestly, whether the Tea Party is useful or not at this point is unfortunately a distraction, because what we are about to see is cascade around this country as we look at the audit that's coming at Fannie, Freddie, and the Fed, as we reveal the actual fraud, that my commitment to Tea Party values at its outset, along with Rick and people like yourself, that has long drifted far away from me and everybody else and all this nonsense. We need an organization politically, not a partisan organization, a nonpartisan organization, to purely function on the meme of cheat or compete, and do that in a way that is transparent and engenders trust. If anything, do you think, Carl, it's better to try to redirect this Tea Party, the Sarah Palin sort of right-wing funded bastardization of this group, the understandably angry group, or is there a need for yet another group of people here?
I think we're going to have to start over. Frankly, I'd love to see this turn back into what it began as, but I've given 2 speeches at the local chapter here in Niceville, Florida, and it essentially devolved into guns, gays, and God, which is a fine conversation to have, but that we have parties that argue over all day long. I thought this was supposed to be about fraud, screwing people, and theft in one form or another. We can have that conversation once we take care of why the Tea Party began, and taking it over and saying, okay, well, you know, we're going to go the other direction. I just think it's a bad move.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting is how this movement got co-opted so brilliantly, because it started out on the right foot, but yet no
cheat or compete,
right? And no protests at the Fed, no protests at Wall Street, no protests at the Obama Treasury Department. And think about that. I mean, if you're a conservative and you're against all this stuff, why didn't you go protest Tim Geithner, the heart of the problem, right? And the reason is because the people with the money, they came in and said, hey, look, I'm going to pay for the buses, I'm going to pay for the signs, I'm going to pay for the donuts, I'm going to pay for everything, but you got to do what I'm asking. And they did it very subtly, and they took over the movement, and next thing you know, they said, what's our number one objective? To get the government out of our business. Now, that's a clever way of putting it, but really what they're saying is no cops on the beat. Now, who wants no cops on the beat? The robbers do. Okay, so the robbers took over and basically got these Tea Party folks, who I think in a lot of ways mean well, to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take the cops off your street so I can rob your house. And they said, great idea, let's do a protest in favor of it.
Now, ironically, these people were the very people, Carl, we'll wrap this up, that were marshaling to get the cops on the beat to end the fraud. And now Cenk argues that the very people that were rallying to get the cops on the beat, to get the investigation to end the fraud, are now one of the most active groups in trying to get the cops off the beat.
Yeah, it's pretty much what's happened, Dylan. I mean, I've watched this, and I had an interview with Governor Johnson yesterday, and I couldn't get him to say, stop the looting and start the prosecuting. I tried for 30 minutes and failed. So, he's not a Tea Party member, but he's in this general camp, isn't he?
We would think, listen, this conversation will be continued, if only because the fraud runs so deep and we're going to have to deal with it. And if the Tea Party doesn't, somebody else will. I hope to be able to work with both you, Carl, and Cenk in that effort.